Let's talk. We want to welcome you to SAZETU. Let's talk. The show's alive because of SAZETU.
SAZETU is brought to you by Maine Spirits. Learn more about the delicious spirits they import into the great state of Maine and the cocktails you can make with them at mainspirits.com or by downloading their app for your smartphone or visiting them on Instagram at Maine_spirits. Promotional consideration by State Theater Portland. Visit statetheaterportland.com for an up-to-date schedule of virtual events and upcoming announcements as we get closer to normalcy. And Sun Tiki Studios, a top-notch rehearsal and performance facility located on Forest Avenue in Portland, Maine. Learn more at suntikistudios.com.
Hello and welcome to Happy Hour, brought to you by Maine Spirits. Maine Spirits bring all of the delicious liquors into the great state of Maine. It is my job here on Happy Hour to show you how to use them in the comfort of your own home. What we've been doing recently is spending many episodes on the same liqueur, or liquor. In this case, liqueur, we're using Cointreau. So we've done a few Cointreau drinks, and today will be no exception. We are going to learn how to make a vodka sidecar. So for tools, we'll need a shaker, a strainer, a jigger, a paring knife, and a coupe glass. You should pretty much always have a shaker, a strainer, a jigger, and a paring knife ready to go when making drinks, and a bar spoon as well. You need a bar spoon. For ingredients, we will need vodka, Cointreau, lemon juice, and sugar. So let's build. In a shaker full of ice, add 2 ounces of vodka, 1 ounce of Cointreau, 5 ounces of lemon juice. Now shake that until cold, and rim your coupe glass with sugar, kind of like a margarita style. Except sugar, not salt. I guess you could do sugar in a margarita as well, but whatever, you do you. Strain that cocktail into the coupe glass and garnish with a lemon twist. And now, let's take a sip. There you have it. Cointreau. Super useful. Fancy triple sec. That's what we're talking about here. A delicious orange liqueur that you can drink on its own, or in the many cocktails that I've shown you how to make, and today was the vodka sidecar. You can find out more about this cocktail and many other drinks at mainspirits.com. You can download their app for your smartphone, which is a smart move because it's a wealth of information. What to buy, where to buy it, and what to do with it once you get it. You can also follow them on Instagram at main_spirits. And you can follow them on YouTube, where I actually do long-form happy hour videos. You might want to check those out. Maybe you'd like it. But regardless of what you decide to do with your time, and whether or not you decide to download anything at all, we implore you to drink deliciously and responsibly. This is another example of a show that Zach and I cut and then got on the horn the next morning and realized that it might be possible that the average listener might not be interested in a 2+ hour conversation about movies that didn't get made.
Yes, although both of us find it fascinating enough to talk about it for 2+ hours.
Yes.
It's another step along the path of us learning how to self-edit.
That's right. Yeah. You might even say that at 2+ hours, we felt like we were cutting it short.
Yep. Well, considering we got back on the phone afterwards and talked more, I think we did cut it short at 2+ hours.
Yep. We probably talked for another hour and a half after a 2+ hour conversation. Yeah. Oh, my word.
Well, I guess if at first you don't succeed, try again. And here we are, trying again.
Yeah. So what we will present to you now is a not severely edited, but we've prioritized. We've prioritized our list. We'll mention everything that we mentioned before, but we maybe won't get into grisly detail and go down, rabbit holes, which is really hard for me because I'm like, most of my conversational tact is like 70% rabbit holes.
Same. How about if you, the listener, hears something that we mentioned in passing that you would like to hear us go more in depth on, leave it in the
Call
comments
us.
wherever you're listening, or email us, or let us know, and we'll talk about it.
Or just call us. We'll talk to you about it for 2+ hours.
Just get on a conference call with us.
This is a service that we can offer people. Anyone who'd like to do a Zoom.
I mean, most of you probably have our numbers in your phone anyway, so
Yeah, that's right.
Just hit us up.
My number is 3. Call me.
Yeah, I'm saved on under number 1 in your favorites.
That's right.
So,
Yep. All right. Want to dig into this?
yeah, let's dig right in.
Here, folks, is just in case you started listening and you didn't read what the show is about. This is a list of movies that didn't get made, but were like heavily considered / close / some of them actually in production, and then just production was halted.
Yeah, most of them had at least a pitch to some point, concept art. Even through pre-production, somebody had greenlit it. Directors were attached.
Stars.
A lot of this stuff, you can Google it and find the unused scripts or find the concept art. It's pretty fascinating to me. Anyway, I hope it is to all of you.
It is to me. So at the very least, you're entertaining one person.
Good.
Or maybe at the very most.
It's nice to know that whenever we start the show, I already have one listener in you.
That's right. That's right. So let's just jump into this list, and we'll give you a little, this. We called movies that we found interesting that didn't get made. There are many, many more movies that didn't get made, but these are the ones that rang our bell, so to speak.
So the very first script that Sylvester Stallone wrote before Rocky was an Edgar Allan Poe biopic that he still someday wants to make, maybe not as star, but as director.
He should star.
He should star.
Hey.
In the mid-'90s, Wesley Snipes was pitching Marvel's Black Panther. Most people thought he was talking about the revolutionaries, so he had a really hard time communicating the idea. But did get the green light eventually, but figured it was easier to do the guy that kills vampires instead. So that's what they did.
Hollywood decided that. Maybe.
Yeah, Hollywood decided that.
Yeah. Also, I'll say on that one, I'm glad they waited.
Yeah, for sure.
No shade to Wesley Snipes, but
No,
technology and all that.
Yeah, that would have been Wesley Snipes in a leotard.
Yep, purple leotard.
Yeah. Although I'm sure it would have had some good martial arts because he's good at doing that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we also almost had Terry Gilliam was going to do Watchmen. He's the one that called it an unfilmable story because he hated
after watching Zack Snyder's cut. I'm not going to disagree.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he hated every script that came his way. He was like, "You cannot fit this into 2.5-hour movie." So that's a property that was passed around quite a bit after that. But and Zack Snyder finally made it and proved Terry Gilliam right.
Yeah. When that movie came out, Rolling Stone reviewed it as, "It's awful. It's awesome. It's both."
It's both. Yeah.
It's true.
I mean, Terry Gilliam also said it would be better served as a series. And even though I have not watched the Watchmen series, the positive reaction to that makes me think that he was right on that one too. Yeah.
Yes. Also, another property near and dear to our heart is Star Trek Phase 2, because the show only had 3 seasons in its original iteration, went off the air, and was actually more popular in syndication than it was in its original run. And so Paramount, Viacom, whatever they were called at that time, CBS, decided that they were going to reboot it. So there's all kinds of concept art and costumes were designed and all this stuff. And then all of a sudden Star Wars was a pretty big hit, you might have noticed. And so then Paramount was like, well, what do we have? And so that's when Star Trek Phase 2 actually just turned into Star Trek The Motion Picture. Fun fact, the Enterprise design for Star Trek Phase 2 was actually later used in the current show Discovery.
Did you know that Leonard Nimoy was not going to come back for Star Trek Phase 2?
Yep.
The character of Ilea was written to be the replacement science officer. But yeah, once it turned into him, because I think Leonard Nimoy at the time was, he had written a biography called "I Am Not Spock."
Yeah. He also had some beef with CBS/Paramount about royalties and stuff like that.
But yeah, by the time they were like, we're making a movie, they're like, you can't do a Star Trek movie without Spock. So
no,
and thankfully he came back.
The series wouldn't have worked either.
No, it wouldn't.
Like, how is if you know the character of Aaliyah, anyway, that's a rabbit hole that didn't get made.
The very first James Bond movie was almost directed by Alfred Hitchcock. 1958, Ian Fleming wrote Thunderball as a script, and they pitched it to, because it was influenced by North by Northwest, or at least their depiction of the character. They pitched it to Hitchcock. They pitched it to Hitch, and he said no. And then it was quite a while before Bond movies were made. Well, I guess not too long. 62 was Dr. No.
Right, and you had mentioned that there was a squabble over that script because it was co-written. It was developed by somebody.
Yeah, this guy, Kevin McClory, co-wrote the screenplay with Ian Fleming, but then Fleming turned it into a novel, and then that novel was turned into a movie in 1965, and Kevin McClory was like, hey, I co-wrote that original screenplay with you. So like all of the, like Ernst Stavro Blofeld and Spectre and like that whole evil organization, where there's disputes over the intellectual property, which is why none of that stuff showed up between 1970 and 2015. And also that 1983 remake of Thunderball, Never Say Never Again, was made by that guy, Kevin McClory, because he still owned rights to it.
Oh, wow. And that's how that got wrangled away from MGM, right?
Exactly.
Got it.
Yep.
Got it. Interesting.
Also, we briefly mentioned this last week, but Quentin Tarantino was going to do a Vega Brothers movie with Michael Madsen and John Travolta called Double V Vega. About the Vega Brothers, and it was either going to be a prequel where they were in Amsterdam when running Marcellus Wallace's club, or at one point he talked about doing it as each of them had a twin, and they get released from prison after their brothers are killed, and they meet up. But
each... Yeah. Two sets of twins.
Yeah, two sets of twins. Michael Madsen said in a quote, he's like, it sounds crazy, but when Quentin Tarantino's pitching it to you, you can't help but get excited about it.
Yeah, he could have made it work.
Yeah.
Speaking of crazy movie plots, Gladiator was pitched a sequel, which was heavily entertained but not greenlit. And it was written by Nick Cave from our line of work. Rock musician or whatever, musician Nick Cave, and it involved the Russell Crowe's character he was a gladiator, like through time and space and dimensions. So like he was always a gladiator, so that had him gladiating.
Yeah, that is the official term.
Yeah, I believe so. In modern times and the Civil War, and just kind of moved around a lot. I don't know. That it sounds just crazy as hell, and I wouldn't have minded seeing it be made.
That just reminded me that there is an Australian movie with Guy Pearce. The name is escaping me right now, based on a story by Nick Cave, but it does not have any time travel or gladiating.
Boring.
Boring. I can't think of the name of it, so it doesn't help anybody.
Nor can I.
Look up Nick Cave and Guy Pearce, and you'll find it.
I'll look it up while you talk about the next thing.
Oh, sure. I think it starts with a P, if that helps at all. So the next
Get ready
thing...
for me to interrupt you with the name. And again, just then when I just interrupted you.
Oh, sure. Yeah. That's the name of the game here, is interruptions. So Terry Gilliam, I spoke of him earlier. Sorry, I'm having a really hard time
How's your mouth
speaking today. But he has since made a Man of La Mancha movie, but he first started that, I think, like early 90s. And it was a case of literally everything that can go wrong on a movie going wrong. We've got the funding. We lost the funding. We built the sets. The sets were destroyed. We cast the actors, and now one of the actors died. And so obviously that didn't happen back then. But there's a documentary called Lost in La Mancha, which is excellent. So I would highly recommend that, even though I still haven't seen Terry Gilliam's finished Man of La Mancha film. The documentary on his failed film is excellent.
Yeah, me either. It's I can't bring myself to do it just because the having watched the documentary, it's just like, oh,
Yeah.
so brutal.
I'm interested to watch the finished one just because, well, I don't know. I remember when it came out, I was like happy for him. Like I wanted to high five Terry Gilliam for finally getting it done. Mm-hmm. But it looks good too. I think isn't it Jonathan Pryce in it now instead of, I don't know. I got to go back.
Yeah, it's Jonathan Pryce.
Yeah.
That's correct.
I bet it's good.
I'm not seeing any Guy Pearce movies that start with letter P.
Okay.
I've got Woundings, I've got Ravenous, going back, Devil Game, Halifax, LA Confidential, Breakthrough, Snowy River, Dating the Enemy, Priscilla, Queen of the Desert?
No.
Okay.
I think it would have been. Maybe it isn't a Nick Cave thing.
Boney?
You typed
Hunting?
Guy Pearce Nick Cave and nothing came up.
No, I did Guy Pearce. Heaven Tonight. Okay, now I'll do Nick Cave. Talk about the next movie.
All right. Stanley Kubrick, obviously, would be interested to see anything that his name is attached to. He was going to do a Napoleon movie, and they scouted locations. They even got the Romanian People's Army to be the extras in it. They had 50,000 soldiers, I think, 40,000 soldiers, and then 10,000 cavalry. But then the movie Waterloo came out and bombed, and it was just too expensive, so they were like, never mind. And then Bryan Singer
Kubrick will come up again a little bit later, by the way.
It will. It will.
Yeah. Twill.
Bryan Singer had a handful of canceled projects. He had a Battlestar Galactica miniseries that he was working on in 2000. And then when 9/11 happened, the backstory for their Battlestar Galactica was way too close to that, and they were just like, never mind. Nobody wants to watch that now.
Right. Which is essentially the backstory that they used for the Edward James Olmos starring. Yes.
Bryan Singer was also working on a Logan's Run remake that went through a whole bunch of different phases. But I guess their idea was to make a version of Logan's Run that was closer to the book rather than the original film, which I quite like, actually.
Mm-hmm. It was that was a very popular movie at the time.
Yeah, I mean, they made a TV show of it, too, which I've actually never seen, the TV show.
Same. I gave up on my search.
Okay, that's fine.
I'm just not seeing it.
Maybe I'll give it a shot while you're...
Yeah, you give it a shot, and I will talk about... obviously, Arnold Schwarzenegger had a astounding run as a box office gold magnet, and there were a number of projects pitched with him attached, also with directors with whom he had great success. So a movie called Crusade, directed by Paul Verhoeven, which would have been kind of a commentary on religious hierarchies and socioeconomics. Because, Verhoeven, all of his movies are social commentary for the most part.
He's great at... almost like treading the line of absurdist, but
for sure,
but doing real life commentary that is, eternally relevant.
Yes, yeah. Starship Troopers is way deeper than you'd think it is.
Exactly, RoboCop is way, way deeper than you think it is.
Well, I thought RoboCop to me is like the one of his movies that is just 100% ironclad excellent.
Oh yeah.
Some of the other ones you have to have like a little bit of a grain of salt. He doesn't kind of roll with it. But yeah, so also John McTiernan, who is, in my opinion, the greatest action director of all time. Die Hard, Hunt for Red October, and Predator. He worked with Arnold Schwarzenegger in Predator, and they're going to do a film adaptation of Sergeant Rock, and then that hit a wall because turns out presenting an American American sergeant fighting in World War II that has an Austrian accent was going to be a little confusing for the viewer.
I would have suspended my disbelief for that. I would have let that fly.
And if anyone could have pulled it off, it would have been John McTiernan, because, as I mentioned, Hunt for Red October, there's that whole scene where they switch from everyone's speaking Russian to everyone speaking in their native tongue, and then you spend the rest of the movie believing that Sean Connery is Russian. You know, and you don't even think about it.
It's true.
Yeah, they probably could have.
If they would have just needed like a single line of dialogue about him somehow, like, I don't know, being born in America or like coming there at a young age, or I don't know. Like,
I'm from Oklahoma.
Yeah, exactly.
I was born and raised in Wisconsin.
I was raised on a farm in Nebraska.
Nebraska, corn farmer. My father was he said, put the corn in the hopper. Get to the hopper.
Get to the hopper.
And so James Cameron, another, often director of Arnold Schwarzenegger and Terminator, obviously, was going to make True Lies 2, but then he was going to make it after he finished up with Titanic, but he found Titanic to be an epic pain in the ass to make. At the time, if you remember, that was the first movie that cost $100 million. So they brought in multiple studios, and so he just... Bottom line is he was just too tired after Titanic to make True Lies.
He thought that he was just going to do a quick little Titanic and get to work on his next film.
Yeah. Well, he does. You don't have to write the end.
That's true.
Spoiler.
I mean, not to go down the Titanic rabbit hole, but that movie is, like Jurassic Park, a huge breakthrough in special effects, combining practical and computer effects, and it looks fantastic still.
It really does. Holds up.
Mm-hmm.
Holds up better than the boat.
Yep. It turns out the movie is unsinkable.
Good one. So James Cameron was working on with Carolco, which is the company that owned Terminator, and they're all fucked up now. They don't exist, and that's why Terminator keeps getting bounced around. But they had the rights to Spider-Man, if you can believe such a thing. like Spider-Man was floating around.
I mean, I can believe that based on the Spider-Man TV show and movies that we got in the 70s.
Fair. But yeah, James Cameron was going to take a swipe at that and didn't get made because his vision was a little too adult, apparently. There's lots of cussing and some sexy times. But Leo was attached. I call him Leo. Lenny DiCaprio was attached to play the Spider-Man boy. So it could have been interesting.
James Cameron wrote... so in the comic books, I think in pretty much every iteration of Spider-Man, he's built his web shooters because he's a boy genius. Mm-hmm. And James Cameron wrote in his script that Spider-Man has organic web shooters, and that it was, I think, the one carryover from his script that made it to Sam Raimi's Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm. In other superhero news, we almost got a version of Green Lantern starring Jack Black, and I love Jack Black.
Same.
And I love this guy too, Robert Smigel, who is a famous SNL writer, producer of Conan O'Brien, Triumph the Insult Comic Dog creator and actor.
In Saturday TV Funhouse.
Come back with my show. But yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me.
No, I mean, it would have had to be just a hilarious comedy, right? Or an over the top. No, it would have been funny. Those guys are funny. It would have been.
It would have been funny, but it would have been treating like something that it would have made it so that you wouldn't be able to insert. Knowing what we know now.
Yeah.
Green Lantern's a Marvel property, right?
No, it's DC.
Oh, it's DC? Oh, that's why it's all fucked up.
Yeah.
Because apparently the studio that, the company that has Batman doesn't know how to make superhero movies anymore.
Yeah.
But then back to Spider-Man, it was Spider-Man 4, which got kind of taken away from Sam Raimi because they were having casting problems. And even though the movie went on to make nearly $1 billion, which it was $890 million that gross Spider-Man 3, it was kind of like widely panned, and and then Kirsten Dunst was on the fence and deadlines. And then I think you told me that they actually started making the Amazing Spider-Man reboot. They're planning that behind his back or something.
Yeah, well, I mean, I probably need to dig a little deeper on that, but what I believe that while he was sort of getting his pieces in line for Spider-Man 4, they were already making the moves to reboot the property. Which I'm not really sure why, because I mean, Spider-Man 3 was not a critical success, and you know there are parts of it that are good, there are parts of it that are terrible, right? But it made money. You know, it's not like it was a
lot
bomb.
of it.
Yeah, it was a huge financial success.
Yeah, that's like current Marvel numbers. So whatever.
I don't know.
But also like the Venom movie with what's his nuts?
Yeah,
Tom Hardy.
Tom Hardy.
Like that made that was flirting with $1 billion in box office as well, which is crazy to me because it's not good.
No, it's another bad movie.
It's bad. Like Spider-Man 3 is not flat. It's not bad. The whole thing, like you said, there are redeeming qualities to it, but I don't know, like Venom is just bad.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. I think Venom is actually handled better in Spider-Man 3, and that's the worst part of that movie.
Oh, except they had that guy playing him though. Is it Topher Grace?
Topher Grace, yeah, he was a bit of miscasting.
Terrible casting. It's like no, Venom, take that guy's body over. I don't want to look at his fucking head.
I mean, I would have been interested to see Spider-Man 4 just because I think Sam Raimi was definitely, you know, he wanted redemption after what he saw as a failure for Spider-Man 3, and I don't know, and I just like his style anyway. So,
well, lucky for you, you're gonna get some sort of return because apparently he's directing the new Doctor Strange.
That's right, and that's a perfect property for him to sink into. I can't wait.
I can't wait.
So, speaking of DC comics and their movie things, they have there's a ton of DC ideas that have been thrown around and made it to certain places, and I'm going to go ahead and take you on a little bit of a journey if you don't mind.
Oh, I'm going to pull up a chair.
Oh, please do. Oh, you've been standing this whole time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dip my toes in the jacuzzi, baby.
That's right. Slip out this book.
The Buttress of Windsor. Never stops.
Nope. 1966, Toho Films, who were doing the Godzilla movies, and Greenway Productions, who were doing the Batman television series, they got together to do Batman vs. Godzilla. Actually wrote a couple of different treatments for it. I wish we saw that because I love the 60s Batman, and I think that would have been hilarious. But
that would have been with Adam West and Burt Ward.
That's right. Yeah, it would have been Batman and Robin going to Japan and fighting Godzilla.
Oh my God.
I think I read a quick thing on the Batman wiki about it was something like they're going with like maybe Barbara Gordon was studying abroad or something like that, and so they went over with Commissioner Gordon, and then somehow while they're in Japan, Godzilla attacks. Yeah, and I'm sure Batman has his giant lizard bat spray
on his belt. Nuclear.
Good thing I remembered to pack my bat radioactive lizard spray.
Leaping lizards.
And then after Joel Schumacher made his Batman films in the late 90s that were bad and badder, I think...
Not good.
No, not good. Not good. And I think it was like, you know, each one... they still made boatloads of money, but less money each time, and more money was being pumped into them. So I think they were seen, even commercially, as failures, even though they made hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah, because they were putting so much into marketing at that point.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard that usually a film's marketing budget equals its production budget. So, like, so a $100 million movie is actually $200 million once you get into marketing. So, yeah, when you're talking about these movies, I don't know. But yeah, so Joel Schumacher was looking for redemption, and he pitched the idea for Batman Year One, which was a Frank Miller graphic novel about not Batman as a baby, but his first year of being Batman.
It's just all Alfred burping him.
It's just 2 hours of little Bruce Wayne crying with a little baby Batman outfit on.
Does somebody want some milk?
Yeah, they still got Michael Caine, so that'll be in that one. Actually, you know what? Michael Caine, for being one of the legendary great actors of all time, he's not above being in a piece of crap movie.
No, he's not. He's like, same with Hackman and Walken. Yeah. They don't give a shit.
Exactly.
They're excellent in everything that they're in, even if it's a piece of shit.
So Warner Brothers was actually into the idea of doing Batman Year One. They didn't like Schumacher for the job at that point. So that floated around for a while.
You know why, dude? Bat nips.
That's right.
That's why.
And ice puns from Arnold Schwarzenegger. Chill out, cool party.
Oh God.
Oh boy.
You want crushed ice? Put it in the chopper. Get to the chopper.
That did sort of open the door for Christopher Nolan to tackle Batman Begins. So, and there's actually a really good animated Batman Year One. So check that out if you care. Tim Burton was going to do Batman 3, or as he was going to call it, Batman Continues. Which is funny because Batman Returns, he didn't really go anywhere. He came back in movie form. He's still in Gotham City.
Yeah.
So I guess Continues was just going to be Tim Burton continuing to tell his story, which I would have loved to see because I'm a huge fan of those Tim Burton Batman movies. I know some people that read the Batman comics are not as crazy about his interpretation, but I enjoy Tim Burton's like weird vision, and I like putting Batman into like a freaky Tim Burton world.
Well, suffice to say, up until that point, and no disrespect to the Richard Donner Superman movies, but without Tim Burton having taken that plunge and having been creative with, the franchise, we wouldn't be where we're at right now with everything, like Thor Ragnarok, how creative is that? So anyway.
Yeah, for sure. He was for Batman Continues. He had for Batman Returns, they'd cast Marlon Wayans as Robin, and ended
that's
up.
So cool.
Yeah, I think that's such a great idea, especially like back then. But they had put him on the back burner because just Batman Returns was already overcrowded with characters. So that was going to come about.
It had like two villains, right? Max Schreck and Penguin.
Penguin and Catwoman. Yeah.
Oh, Catwoman! I forget that she's a.
That's right. And so Billy D. Williams was going to come back as Harvey Dent / Two-Face. And actually, he was supposed to be in Batman Returns. I can't remember what the deal is, why that didn't work out. But Max Schreck was actually written when Harvey Dent couldn't do it. Because that scene at the end where Catwoman electrocutes him, that was supposed to be their version of how Two-Face became Two-Face.
Got it.
But they were still going to rewrite an origin story for him in the third one. They had done that pickup shot at the end of Batman Returns, so Catwoman actually lives, so she could be in the third one. But there was just there's a huge blowback from parents who had and McDonald's basically. Like it was before people could get on Facebook and be like, "I'm mad about this," so they wrote letters to McDonald's was advertising all the Batman Returns stuff to kids, and parents were taking their kids to see it, and then it was like, oh, there's just like this blob with black goo coming out of his mouth making sex jokes.
Yeah.
Like not a kid's movie, really.
Well, I mean, Michelle Pfeiffer, it's not necessarily kid stuff.
No, Penguin bites a guy's nose off.
Yeah, well, there's that. Yeah, but also I was just thinking like the fetishist aspect of
like
the cat
dominatrix
suit.
outfit.
That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah, it's
Whatever, no shade, but
no shade.
Yeah, that doesn't pair well with a Happy Meal.
No. Collectible bat frisbee lids, only at McDonald's.
Collectible zipper mask.
Yeah. Anyway.
Mommy, open your zipper, hun. Can I go to Timmy's house and play Batman? Be home before the lights come up.
Timmy's standing out there with black goo coming out of his mouth, talking about
like,
kidnapping
what is
babies.
This shit? Why can't you guys play cowboys and Indians? Thanks, Tim Burton.
Well,
It's just that was like the nail in the coffin of 1950s America. Like that was it. It was over after Batman Returns.
Yeah, thanks, Tim Burton.
God bless him.
Well, he said he went in for a meeting with Warner Brothers to start working on Batman Continues, and he starts pitching all these ideas and talking about how he's going to use the characters and all this. Mm-hmm. And he said, like, the executives are just sitting across from him, staring at him with blank faces, like, not reacting to any of his ideas.
Sure.
And finally, he's just like, so you guys just don't want me to make this movie, right? And they're like, yeah, we're thinking about going in a different direction. So
they brought on the Candyman.
Yeah.
And the bat nips.
But Tim Burton went on to make Ed Wood, so I think that was a good trade-off.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that was like Tim Burton prime.
For sure.
Edward Scissorhands shortly thereafter.
Yeah, and I can't help but feeling like his decision to make an Ed Wood movie has to do with probably the way that he was feeling chewed up and spit out by the movie industry.
Sure. For his crazy ideas.
Yep.
Oh, man, that movie. What a masterpiece.
It is a masterpiece. But speaking of Tim Burton, this one is... So there's a great documentary you should watch. Tim Burton was going to direct a movie in the late 90s called Superman Lives. And there's a documentary called The Death of Superman Lives, What Happened? That if you have any interest in this, I highly recommend it, because they talk to everybody that was involved in making it. They show a ton of the concept art and the costume tests and all this stuff. But the story itself is kind of crazy, too. This producer, John Peters, who had actually been a producer on Tim Burton's Batman, and I think was an executive producer on Batman Returns, acquired the rights to Superman, like, just because somebody gave him a heads up that I think Warner Brothers had owned the rights to Superman still from the Richard Donner days. Even though they had licensed it out to a smaller company for Superman 4, which pretty much was the nail in the coffin for Superman for a while.
Oh, The Quest for Peace?
The Quest for Peace. Yeah, not a good movie.
No.
But yeah, so this guy, he bought the rights to Superman and went into Warner Brothers, and he's like, hey, I want to produce a Superman movie. And they're like, well, we own the rights to that. And he's like, check your files, boys. I don't believe you do. Yeah.
So it's basically the movie business equivalent of patent trolling.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But so they were like, they were interested. He had a script commissioned that ended up just being sat on for a while. And then Kevin Smith of, Clerks and Mallrats fames. Wow, I'm really having a hard time with words today. Yeah. He was in Warner Brothers for some other meeting, and apparently the idea of a Superman movie came up, and he just like lit up. He was like, "Ooh, you guys are making another Superman movie?" And whoever he was talking to was like, "Yeah, why don't you check out the script?" And so he gave him a copy of the script to take home, and then later he got a call from them. They're like, "We want you to come back in and talk about that Superman script." And he was like, "Oh, like you actually want my opinion on this script?" Right. And he was basically just like, it's terrible. I hate everything about it. It misses the mark of the character. It's like, it doesn't ring true to the comic books at all. And I guess he actually even suggested, he's like, why don't you guys just hire the comic book writers to write your Superman movie? And they're like, because they're comic book writers. They're not movie writers.
Yeah.
And so then he was just like, well, whatever. I guess I lost my chance to do anything with Warner Brothers because I was honest about what I thought about that script.
Right.
But then they ended up calling him, being like, would you like to take a crack at writing Superman? And he was like, would I? But they were like, before we can hire you for this, you need to get approval from John Peters, the producer on this project. And so he went to talk to him, and Peters is like, all right, here's the deal. I want 3 things from you. Superman doesn't fly. No flying. I don't want to see him fly in this film. He's like, what? So that's what so Superman does.
That's his main thing.
Yeah. He's like, number 2, he can't wear that suit. I don't want to see him in the suit. He's like the Superman suit? It's like, yeah, I don't like the way he looks in that suit. Can't wear it. It's like, okay, yes, what's number 3? He's like, number 3, he's got to fight a giant spider. He's like, Spiders are the most terrifying things in the universe, and I want Superman to fight a giant one. And so Kevin Smith is like, all right, fine, I'll find a way to work with all of those rules.
Which are ridiculous.
And apparently he just wrote so the script that he originally got was called Superman Reborn, which he was like, even title-wise, just sounded like Superman rebranded.
Right.
And Superman had just died and come back in the comic books, so he changed it to Superman Lives and kind of based the story around that. And apparently just wrote like a fanboy, like every character shows up in it. And but Warner Brothers liked it enough to be like, all right, let's make this movie. And so they're like, who do you want to direct? And both John Peters and Kevin Smith were like, Tim Burton's the guy. He brought back Batman. We want him to do Superman. He can do for Superman what he did for Batman. So they did. They hired Tim Burton, and immediately he was like, I don't like this screenplay. Fire the guy who wrote it.
Oh, God.
So Kevin Smith was out. He brought in the guy that had done some writing on Batman Returns, and they just wrote this crazy script that just kept getting crazier. And the whole thing Tim Burton wanted to focus on is Superman is an alien. He's on Earth by himself. Like in this version of the story, he doesn't know that he's an alien. He's just like, why am I weird? Why don't I fit in? Why am I doing these things?
Right.
And then Lex Luthor discovers the remnants of the ship that Superman came to Earth on. And so he starts putting it together like, oh, I get it. I'm an alien. But yeah, that was the whole thing. They were going to lean into just Superman being like insecure and like, I don't fit in and I'm the last of my race and all this stuff. And they decided Nicolas Cage was the best actor to portray that.
Well, they're not wrong.
Yeah. I mean, it seems crazy, but yeah, in the documentary when they're talking to Tim Burton, he's like, when I cast Michael Keaton as Batman, people were like, why did you make Mr. Mom Batman?
Right, Mr. Mom.
Yeah. And he's like, because Michael Keaton has the craziest looking eyes. Like, he looks like an insane man, which Batman is. And
That's right.
Yeah. And he can play that. And he's like, also, like, people complain that Michael Keaton wasn't physically intimidating. But he's like, if Batman looked like Arnold Schwarzenegger, he wouldn't need to dress like a bat. He could just intimidate people because he's huge.
Right.
Like, Michael Keaton, like, needs to dress like a bat to scare people. Like, it makes sense. And so that was his thing with Nicolas Cage, too. He's like, Nicolas Cage is a weirdo who seems like an alien. He can play my version of Superman.
Wow.
And it turns out Nick Cage is a huge Superman fan. So they seem to be on the same page a lot. But they basically had like blank check going into this thing. It was sets, props, like tons of designs for like all these creatures and ships and all this stuff. Like, it was just every idea was being thrown in and worked on. And they even had so Brainiac was going to be played by Christopher Walken.
Awesome.
And they had him with like a head in a bowl kind of thing with a spider body because John Peters wanted his spider.
Oh, right, the spider. Very important.
They were going to do, in the early Superman comics, Superman didn't fly. He could leap tall buildings in a single bound.
Right.
And so they had Superman doesn't fly. He just can leap tall buildings in a single bound. Yep. And they had a bunch of different variations on the costume that all served like different purposes. But then Warner Brothers had just like a string of failures. And at that point, like, the blank check turned into, we needed to tighten this budget and figure out how to make this, and things kind of just went to shit from there.
Yeah.
Eventually, I think it got to the point where Tim Burton was just like, I can't do this anymore, and Warner Brothers was like, I don't think we want to put any more money in this. He walked away. Peters was like, I can't even get Tim Burton on the phone at this point because he's just so angry about everything that just went down.
Yeah, because the guy sounds like a real asshole.
Yeah, definitely. Well, yeah, there's other stories of people having a lot of trouble with this guy. But then apparently John Peters also had the rights to Wild Wild West, and that was being pitched around. And Will Smith agreed to star in that movie, and he was, one of the hottest actors in Hollywood at the time. So he was just like, all right, whatever. All of the Superman Live stuff was funneled into Wild Wild West instead.
Oh, wow.
And John Peters got his big spider.
Yes, he did.
So yeah, that's Superman Lives, and then I'll be quicker on the follow-ups here. There was another attempt by John Peters to make Superman in the early 2000s. He got J.J. Abrams to write a script called Superman Flyby. That for Brett Ratner was attached to direct it at one point, but he left the project because of what he called violent disagreements with John Peters.
Well, there you go.
And then eventually that project kind of morphed into Superman Returns, which Bryan Singer ended up making. And
Which
that
was okay.
actually, even Superman Returns was, I think that made like $400 million or something. Like that was immediately slated for a sequel that never happened for whatever reason.
I think he got on to X-Men, didn't he?
Well, he was on X-Men before that. He actually left X-Men to work on Superman.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Which I always get, I think I was telling you earlier, I always get Brett Ratner and Bryan Singer confused. Because, Bryan Singer was doing X-Men, left X-Men to do Superman. Brett Ratner was originally attached to Superman, left Superman, and directed X-Men 3. Like,
I thought you were going to say you got them confused because they both have names that sound like people who have memberships at tennis clubs, but they never play tennis and they just sit at the bar and drink martinis.
yes, that too. Which they probably do.
They probably do.
And then the last thing I'll mention on the Superman tip is George Miller was going to do a Justice League movie in 2007. And this was basically the Writers Guild of America strike was looming. And so the Justice League script went from concept to finished cast and into production and then canceled all within the course of a year. Which is, they were going to film it in Australia because of some sort of tax incentives. Those like went away after they got there and set up the production. The strike had happened and they decided they wanted rewrites. And so basically they called the cast together and were like, all right, everybody turn in your scripts, like throw them in this bin, go home. And
Wow.
I guess there was talk at one point of them picking up production in Canada in 2008, but it just never came back together. But yeah, that was fully cast. It was the same thing. Costumes had been made, sets had been built, and yeah, concepts to pre-production, production, and canceled all within a year.
Wow. Yeah. And we've actually, in the movies we've discussed, like a lot of money has been spent.
Yeah, definitely.
So far.
Superman Lives, they said they were $20 million into it when it was canceled.
$20 million.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I mean, that's the amount of money that Warner Brothers was going to give to Terry Gilliam to make his Watchmen.
That's right.
And that was one of the reasons he didn't do it. He's like, that budget's too low. Superman Lives got to spend that much money for nothing.
Yeah, for pre-production, for kicking ideas around. Well, it's also a reason there's so much, so many photographs of the concept art and costumes and even like
there's some
Nick Cage in costume.
ILM did some test flight footage and stuff that actually looks really good, and that's out there too.
I thought I said no flying.
Yeah. Well, I guess it was the footage they keep showing in the documentary is him landing. So I guess he could be coming from a bound.
Get him out of that suit.
Yeah.
I want him in gym shorts.
Actually, it's funny that you say that because I guess one of his complaints was the underwear on the outside thing. And one of the ideas they pitched around at one point was that his suit would look more like a Lakers outfit or something, like a basketball thing.
Oh my God.
They actually did kind of throw around the idea of gym shorts at one point.
Wow. It was just...
and also, other than Brandon Routh's Superman in Superman Returns, all of the versions of Superman since then, I guess, which would just be Henry Cavill's and whatever ones are on TV, I don't believe have the underwear on the outside thing. And that's, I think that was John Peters' compromise, was he didn't like the underwear on the outside, so now the new Superman don't have that.
So he still owns it, huh?
I believe so.
Shifting gears a little bit to a different kind of superhero, group of heroes. There have been several Beatles movies that have been made. Hard Day's Night, Help, Yellow Submarine, Let It Be, and 8 Days a Week, and the new Peter Jackson Get Back movie, which will be coming out hopefully this year.
Cannot wait.
Cannot wait. That footage looks incredible. There were a few movies that didn't get made that were going to involve the Beatles in some capacity. There's one that did get made, unfortunately, that shouldn't have got made, which is called Give My Regards to Broad Street, which I rewatched with my wife. Or I rewatched it. She watched it initially, and I believe her review was, I never want to see that again.
Well, at least you're still married after that.
Yeah, and she's still we still listen to the record. She loves it, Yeah. She loves the McCartney, but that's just, that's not for her. So, in the late 70s, post Xanadu, the producer of that, named Lee Kramer, was going to make a Silver Surfer movie, and he had tapped Paul McCartney to do the soundtrack, which I wish that's probably one of those things where the movie would be like kind of a piece of shit, but the soundtrack would end up on the turntable.
Which was kind of the case with Xanadu. So
yeah, there you go. Yeah. And that soundtrack was Olivia Newton-John and ELO. Mm-hmm. So wrap your head around that. And then more recently, there was going to be a Yellow Submarine reboot, like kind of a CGI motion capture animation kind of vibe. Directed by Robert Zemeckis, who is a storied Beatles fan. He even made a movie in 1978 called I Want to Hold Your Hand, which follows a group of Beatles fans following the Beatles around New York. It's a really good movie.
Yeah, I love that movie.
Yeah. So that, that ended up not being made because I think ultimately Robert Zemeckis got kind of like cold feet on the remake vibe, know? But they went pretty far with it. They made the announcement. At Comic-Con, they had concept art done, some test animations and stuff, and it looked like it would have been really good. They had some really talented voice actors signed on to do it, but that didn't get made.
Yeah, I would have trusted him with that material, and he was in the motion capture game at the time, kind of doing it better than anybody else. I don't know. I'm bummed that we didn't get that. But
yeah, I would have I wouldn't have needed him to remake Yellow Submarine per se. I would just like to see his version of that, with no expectation that it would adhere to the original.
Yeah.
The original is fun. It's
is
great, but it'd be fun to watch a masterful movie making genius in there. I would like to see what the Back to the Future guy would do with Yellow Submarine.
Exactly.
I would like to see that. Another movie that didn't get made, and I'm going to say, thank goodness. When they were kicking the tires, I think it was before Help, or around the time of Help, they were kicking the tires on doing a Lord of the Rings starring the Beatles. And it's got further than you'd think. And they plan to have Paul as Frodo, Ringo as Samwise, George Harrison as Gandalf, and John Lennon as Gollum or Smeagol. And this is one of my two favorite parts. They asked Stanley Kubrick to direct it.
I find that so confusing just because Beatles doing Lord of the Rings, I just think comedy. And then you bring in Stanley Kubrick, and I'm like, so not comedy? Like deadly serious?
Right.
Epic
or
take
comedy,
on it?
I mean, there's lots of comedy in his movies. There's lots of dark humor.
Well, he did Dr. Strangelove, which is serious and hilarious at the same time. So I guess
that's right.
He knows how to balance that.
Yeah, but it doesn't star the Marx Brothers, which is basically what the Beatles were.
Yeah, it does star Peter Sellers though.
It does. That did not get made, and because Kubrick went on to make 2001 to focus on 2001 Past, which I think was a great move on his part. I think everyone involved put out really good work in 1968, and I'm glad they didn't try to do it together because it would not have been as good as their respective works, I think. But another reason it wouldn't have gotten made, even if Kubrick had agreed to do it, was that Tolkien refused to sell the Beatles the rights because he didn't like their vision or their music. Which is, I could just see that being at that point, I don't think any of the Beatles have probably been told no in quite some time. So
it's kind of admirable that, he respects his own intellectual property to the point where he's going to pass up, probably tons of money and it being immortalized by the Beatles. to
Yeah, I
protect
mean,
it.
at that point, it's like, in his brain, he's probably old at the time. It'd be like if Post Malone like came up, it's like, he's like, "What are you? Go away from me."
I don't understand this, and you're bothering me. Get out of here.
Noise. That's not music. And then on rock and roll notes, many people probably know, it's pretty widely spread that or known rather, that Sacha Baron Cohen was originally attached to the Queen biopic that eventually became Bohemian Rhapsody. But what I didn't know was that David Fincher was attached to direct that, and he does not make bad movies.
He does not. I was already bummed out we didn't get the Sacha Baron Cohen Queen movie, and now knowing that David Fincher was attached, I'm even more bummed out.
Oh, yeah, that would have been great. It would have been great. And you just know it would have been great because you see those two names, and that's it. And then you have the music. Get out of here.
Yeah.
But apparently he wanted to make like a bit more of an adult movie. The surviving members of Queen were like, no. And David Fincher also did not make Rendezvous with Rama, which is a sci-fi flick starring Morgan Freeman based on an Arthur C. Clarke story. And he also did not make 7-2, which was titled, and I hate this, 8, spelled E-I, number 8, H-T. It's like, the first movie, it was clever. The second time, fuck you. But neither Fincher nor Brad Pitt wanted anything to do with that because they were just basically inserting Freeman's Somerset into a story they already owned called Solace, which happens a lot in movies. Notably, Die Hard 2 is based on a novel, a book, whatever, called 58 Minutes. They just rewrote it to be a McClane story.
Yeah, that was the same thing with Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. It was just a story about a guy wandering through the desert who finds a colony of kids. And when it landed on George Miller's desk, he was like, let's put Mad Max into this.
Word. Yeah. I thought you were going to say it was like originally the story that became Grumpy Old Men 2. Grumpier Old Men.
It did. Grumpy Old Men 2 is part of the Mad Max expanded universe.
You heard it here, folks.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know
David
that.
Fincher, we now know to be one of the greatest filmmakers. I mean, he could make no more movies, and he would never lose his seat as one of the best, one of the GOATs. But he got his start in a very precarious way.
He did, and this is a subject that I very much enjoy nerding out on, so I'll try to keep it brief.
As we speak to each other and we speak to you, I'll have it known that I'm wearing a replica hat of Harry Dean Stanton's hat in the original Alien. So that's where we're at.
We're at. Well, I've got a cat named Jonesy wandering around my room right now.
Is that true?
No.
No. I have a Jonesy T-shirt. Your name is Jonesy.
It is.
You were named after the cat,
and I'm kind of a cool cat. So there you
your
go.
whole family was named after the cat.
So Alien 3 was almost a whole bunch of different movies, but there was just never a unified vision on it. All the way up to it being completed and released, there was never a unified vision for it.
It's a mess.
It is, and somehow it's a movie that I still like. And that's probably because David Fincher does good work, even though he ultimately disowned it. But that started out as, studios like, we got to do Alien 3. Aliens was a big hit. We got to capitalize on that. So Rennie Harlin, who, went on to do movies like Die Hard 2 and Cutthroat Island, one of the biggest box office bombs of all time, at this point was coming off the back of Nightmare on Elm Street 4, which had exceeded everybody's expectations and actually turned quite a profit. So they saw him as a guy who could take an existing property and do something with it and probably work for cheap.
Right.
And so he came in, he was all psyched. He loves Ridley Scott and James Cameron. He loved their visions on it. And he kind of wanted to he kind of acknowledged to himself, this is a chance to be the third in line of those great directors or a laughingstock that just does a remake of what they've already done.
Right.
And the studio very much just wanted remakes of what they had already done. And every time he brought...
Of course they did.
Yeah. Every time he brought original ideas, they turned it down. I think his two big ideas were he wanted to go to the planet where the aliens come from, and then you find out that they are not violent by nature or whatever. They're just defensive, like they're protecting something. So it kind of would have flipped the alien thing around.
That would have been awesome.
They turned that down. He had the idea of aliens make their way to Earth. And he pitched it like, he's like, here's the teaser trailer. It's just something moving through a cornfield. And then it emerges, it's an alien. And, on Earth, everyone can hear you scream.
So good.
They were not into that either. Just every single time they were like, what about more Marines with more guns fighting more aliens? It's like, so there were a few different scripts written.
That's the Abrams approach.
Yeah, exactly.
Make it bigger.
Make it bigger.
Bigger Death Star.
But he ended up leaving eventually because every script that came back was just a different iteration of stuff that had already been done. He was like, I can't do this. They brought on this guy who his name, Vincent Ward, who he wrote a script, and it was even attached as director. Like everybody loved it. He had this idea of a planet that's entirely made out of wood, and it's occupied by monks, and basically Ripley, her ship crashes there, or they somehow answer like her distress call, and the alien is stowed aboard. And so they're monks with no weapons. There are no women there. And now all of a sudden, like they're like, oh, God is tempting us with this woman. And actually the devil itself is running around. And so, yeah, they seem to be on board. They hired him to work this out. But they also assigned him a secretary who was basically like a spy for the studio. And they would have all these meetings, and she would report back to the studio heads and be like, here's what we talked about. And they decided kind of without him that they wanted it to be a mining planet instead of a wooden planet. They had, in the phase where Rennie Harlan was still involved, they had talked about having have it be a prison ship or something. And so they still kind of wanted that. And eventually, like, the sets were being built in England on the James Bond Pinewood Studios stage, which at the time was the biggest indoor studio. And so, yeah, Vincent Ward thought he was making this movie, and then he's like, wait, these sets and this production design have nothing to do with what I've been, what I thought I was working on.
It's crazy.
It's nuts, yeah. And so
that's the director and writer.
Yeah.
Fucking,
it's like, what is going on?
Like, after, 25 years in the music business, you and I have been in this a minute. It does actually sound like movies are worse.
Yeah, it does. It does. Well, so he left, and then David Fincher was brought on, who at the time had only done music videos. So I can't remember if he came to their attention because of Sigourney Weaver or how that worked out.
I believe that's the case.
Yeah, because I know she obviously speaks very highly of working with him, and she also had it in her contract who got to write the final screenplay too. But at that point, they were writing the screenplay around a production that was already in motion with sets that had already been built. So it was really like
crazy.
They were writing to what they already had to work with because it had come so far in the process.
And this is a movie studio saving money, by the way.
Yeah, by spending tons of it.
Aimlessly. Shots in the dark.
Yeah, so, I mean, they finished the movie. David Fincher walked away from it, actually, even before it was finished, because he turned in an edit that they turned down, and then they did their own edit after he left. That's the theatrical release we got.
Which was fine.
It's fine. I mean, they did on the Alien box set that came out in the, 2000s-ish.
Yeah, not that long ago.
Not that long ago. All the directors were invited to come back and do a director's cut, and he's the only one that refused. So they used his assembly cut, which is better than the theatrical cut by a long shot.
Yes, by a long shot, yeah, for sure. Oh, God.
Yeah, so there's that. And then not too long ago, 6 years ago maybe, Neil Blomkamp was talking about doing in Alien 5 is what it was known as. Neil Blomkamp obviously did District 9 and Chappie and Elysium. Some good kind of out there science fiction films that performed well commercially and critically.
An original voice.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, he's kind of an exciting filmmaker who I'm surprised that we actually haven't heard much from since Alien was canceled.
Well, probably because he wasted so much time trying to get that together.
Yeah.
Anyway, which we were about to learn.
Yeah, so he just, because one of the big negative reactions to Alien 3 was that Michael Bihn's character Hicks and the little girl Newt were killed off screen between films, and like that was part of the triumphant ending of Aliens, was those three making it out alive. So you know, a lot of fans and people thought that it was just it tarnished the legacy of the second one by killing off those two characters off screen between films. So his idea was basically you're just going to pick up right after Aliens as if none of the other sequels ever happened. And he had a couple different treatments, but Ridley Scott started working on Prometheus and eventually Alien Covenant, and there was some overlap, and, you know, Blomkamp's thing got delayed, and I guess it was eventually by like 2017, Ridley Scott was the one that said, no, Blomkamp's Alien has been canceled. So and that was it.
Well, knowing how Prometheus and Covenant kind of never quite made it, and were expensive enough and underperformed enough so that we won't even get the completion of that story, which sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just unsatisfying all the way around. Yeah. I wish we had seen Neil Blomkamp's movie.
Same.
It might be the type of thing, too, where, I mean, no, Ridley Scott is an amazing filmmaker. There's no doubt about that. But, you know, maybe, you know, young minds, fresh ideas.
Yeah.
As Captain Kirk says in Star Trek II, The Wrath of God. Yeah, so on to, like, another one of our favorite franchises and directors. There was a Jurassic Park 4 that it's unlikely that Spielberg would have directed it, considering Joe Johnston did Jurassic Park 3, so it seemed like he kind of has remained in a producer role. But they had a dino-human hybrid idea, which sounds gross.
It does sound gross.
That's like Cronenberg material. But this is going to lead me into actually a conversation about a bunch of actually pretty strange, bizarrely dark Steven Spielberg ideas.
Go on.
Okay, I will. So, Close Encounters constituted a 1-2 punch for Steven Spielberg at that point, right? He had two huge hits. The studio wanted the follow-up to Close Encounters, and he didn't want to do a sequel, but he also didn't want them to do one, right? So he was like, "I'll make you a follow-up," basically.
And that was perhaps a reaction to what happened with Jaws 2, and every Jaws film following that.
That's right. Yeah. So he didn't have. Yeah. They made each subsequent Jaws movie like took the franchise down a 50%.
Yep, that's fair. That's very fair.
Yep. So the movie that he had come up with was called Night Skies, and it was originally called Watch the Skies, but that term was trademarked because it was actually in The Thing from Another World. Anyway, so it's not really a huge point. And that's the whole thing I wanted to tell you, was that was what it was going to be called, and it didn't get made. No. JK. So Night Skies was going to be based on this, you know, supposedly true encounter in Kentucky that had been parlayed to Steven Spielberg by one of the UFO experts that he had surrounded himself with to create Close Encounters. And in this movie, that story is that there was a small family that was like terrorized by these small gremlin creatures, right? And it was really dark. It was not like a fun movie, you know, because like Close Encounters is ominous and creepy and kind of scary at times, but it ultimately is a feel-good movie, right? By the end of it. Night Skies was shaping up to be super dark and violent and scary. And there were a group of aliens, these little gremlin-y aliens, and there was a relationship between one of them. Like, one of the aliens was kind of like not like the others, right? He's kind of kind-hearted. And he took a shine to a kid in the story. I believe in the story the kid had autism. and it was George Harrison Ford's wife at the time, had read the script, and that part it moved her. She's like, I don't get the rest of it, but it made her cry, like, because there's this kindness. They had this this bond, the two of them, the young boy and the alien. So Steve Spielberg was like, ding, ding, ding. I have an idea now for a movie. Sadly, he had already engaged Rick Baker, Academy Award winner, the first person to win an Academy Award for special makeup effects. He had engaged Rick Baker to design these aliens, these gremlins, and he was actually underway and was like $700,000 in production costs doing, the design work, and Steven Spielberg pulled the plug. And apparently they had like a huge falling out, which is a bummer because they're two super talented people. And yeah, so the movie did not get made, and as you probably assumed, the one that did get made was a story of a loving alien who befriends a young boy.
It still makes me cry.
And oddly enough, the studio didn't want that movie because they thought it was going to be like this like Disney, dumb Disney friendly, kid friendly movie. Mm-hmm. They were wrong. So let me just say that if you're a filmmaker, if you're a studio executive and you happen to stumble upon this podcast, A, yes, we would like a production deal. B, start listening. Just stop with the board meetings. Whatever happens in the board meeting, don't do that. And when people like Steven Spielberg say things, do that. Because they're only ever right. And you're only ever right because you accidentally let them do something. Anywho, so he makes E.T., obviously a huge success. I mean, one of the biggest movies of all time at that point. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, the studio wants a sequel. And this is where it gets weird again. He decides to make a sequel called Nocturnal Fears. And this has, Elliot, the whole crew, the gang, right? Mm-hmm. And they find some alien, a spaceship, right, in the woods. Like, oh, they're back. Nope. Red-eyed, sharp-teethed, clawed, cow, livestock, mutilating, child-torturing, mean monsters. Apparently, at one point in the original story, Elliot screams so loud in pain it was echoed through the universe. And then our original ET friends come back and save the kids from their mean cousins. But like, what? What? Like, how is that a follow-up to E.T.?
That would have been Steven Spielberg pulling a Tim Burton before Tim Burton.
Right.
All the parents bringing their kids to see the E.T. sequel. Everybody going home with nightmares.
Yeah, I saw E.T. It came out in 1982, right? Mm-hmm. I saw that in the theater. I was young at that point. I was probably 6, 7, probably 7 by the time I saw it. Mm-hmm. And my mom, how's E.T.? Oh, I liked it. Was it scary? Oh, a little bit, but I liked it. Like, okay. Hey, mom, E.T. 2 is out. Can I go see it? Like, sure thing. What's wrong? He hasn't spoken in a week. Elliot screams so loud.
He's been in his room with all of the lights on for a week.
Yeah, he usually eats all the Reese's Pieces. What happened?
Yeah, he usually likes to leave a trail of them, but now he's throwing them all away.
Now he has his door nailed shut. So, but on another note, this gang of gremlins that they designed for the first one I was talking about, Night Skies, one of them was named Scar. See where this is going?
I do see where this is going.
So apparently they just took that and he gave that to Joe Dante and was like, here, Gremlins. Well, and that's where Gremlins came from. So this what's that?
I was just saying maybe it all worked out, I guess, because E.T. is great, Close Encounters is great, Gremlins is great.
Yeah, it's all good. And yeah, and children weren't scarred forever.
Yeah.
Yeah. He would wait until later in his career to mortify his audiences with a different movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to. I keep saying this every single time, but keep it brief, Zach. Keep it brief.
Wrap it up.
Alejandro Jodorowsky almost made Dune. There's a documentary called Jodorowsky's Dune, which I have not seen yet. But apparently, a guy acquired the rights for it, hired Jodorowsky, and was like, "Here's some money to make this movie." I think they had like $10 million to start out with, and Jodorowsky just blew through like 2 or 3 million of that before they'd even started production. And he started pitching it to, or the producers then started pitching it to studios because he needed more money. And all of the studios were like, nope. So
we're sorry that you spent $2 million on Talk Chalk.
Yeah. So that didn't happen. But, when the rights were available again, Dano De Laurentiis, his company, got the rights. And in 1984, David Lynch made his version of Dune, which... I don't know. I actually kind of like that, but it is a critically panned movie and with good reason. But before that, or in the David Lynch chronology before that, David Lynch was one of 2 directors that was initially offered to direct at what at the time was known as Revenge of the Jedi. We now know it as Return of the Jedi, but George Lucas, one of his people, had reached out to David Cronenberg, who would have made the most disgusting Star Wars movie
ever.
Cronenberg, before the conversation even really got started, he said, "Well, generally I like to work on my own original material." And he said he just heard a click and the dial tone started again. So that didn't go for very long. But David Lynch actually also got the call and did go meet with George Lucas, even though he said that even up front he had no desire to do it. He didn't like science fiction. He didn't get Star Wars. So I just want to read these quotes and let David Lynch speak for himself about this experience.
This is so good.
It says, I was asked by George to come up and see him and talk to him about directing and what would be the 3rd Star Wars. And I had next to zero interest. But I always admired George. George is a guy who does what he loves, and I do what I love. The difference is what George loves makes hundreds of billions of dollars. So I thought I should go up and at least visit with him. And it was incredible. And then he goes on a little bit more about like how he's just getting confused and it's giving him a headache. And he goes, right around this time, I started getting a little bit of a headache. You know what I'm talking about. Okay, he took me upstairs and he showed me these things called Wookiees. And now this headache is getting stronger. And he showed me these crazy animals and all these different things. And then he took me in a ride in his Ferrari for lunch. And George is kind of short, so he had the seat back and he was almost laying back in the car, or laying down in the car. And we were flying through this little town up in Northern California. We went up to a restaurant, and not that I don't like salad, but that's literally all this restaurant had was salad. And then I get really almost like a migraine headache, and I could hardly wait to get home. Even before I got home, I kind of crawled into a phone booth, and I called my agent and said, there's no way I can do this. He said, David, calm down. You don't have to do this. So George, bless his heart, I told him on the phone the next day that he should direct the film. It's his film. He invented everything about it, but he doesn't really love directing, so someone else did direct that film. But I called my lawyer and told him I wasn't going to do it, and he said, you just lost, I don't know how many millions of dollars, but it's okay. So, yeah, Return of the Jedi, 1983, 1984, David Lynch is reconsidering science fiction. Makes Dune.
Totally. I mean, I have said before on this show, and I'll probably say it again, that I have no interest in, even if someone's like, do you want to meet Quentin Tarantino? I'm like, nah. That said, I would totally go out for a not salad with David Lynch.
Yeah, agreed.
He seems awesome. I mean, like how, like, you know, because his movies are like, you know, arguably more art house than, you know, more cerebral maybe than Lucas's
for sure.
movies.
He makes,
but
he
like
makes
the vibe
movies.
For sure. But the vibe you get from him is not like, I am greater than George Lucas. Like, George Lucas does that, I do this. Mm-hmm. You know, and I like that. He's always struck me as kind of like a very like down to earth, you know, person, especially considering how not down to earth his work is. Fewer directors have confused me more and had me thinking for weeks and months and years. after watching his movies. Like, what? Just when you think you got it, like, nah,
Yeah,
I don't get it.
I have
I don't
not
get
figured
it.
it out at all.
I'm not smart enough for this.
I'm kind of glad we did not get David Lynch Star Wars as much as I love David Lynch. That probably would have been a weird mix.
I'm really glad we didn't get Cronenberg's Star Wars.
Same.
Jabba the Hutt scene. I mean, if you think that E.T. 2 Nocturnal Fears would have been terrifying as a child, imagine Cronenberg's Jabba the Hutt.
Jabba the Hutt is gross as The Fly. Like mid-stage The Fly.
So gross. I don't even want to think about it. Like, that scene's already gross.
Yeah.
It's already, I guess to wrap this up and bring it home, we'll talk about a property that both Zach and I love a lot, and that's Ghostbusters. And obviously, we got a Ghostbusters reboot, which I will constantly refer to as a missed opportunity from a top-notch director and killer cast.
I will agree with you on that.
Yeah, they might as well have called that Ghostbusters Meat on the Bone.
It's all there still.
Yeah. So go ahead and just redo it. Same cast, redo. And then we also have Ghostbusters Afterlife. Finally, like a proper Ghostbusters sequel, which I wish they'd just done with the Melissa McCarthy, troupe.
Yeah.
I don't know why we needed to go like reboot, like whatever. Anywho, so Afterlife is going to be directed by Ivan Reitman's son, Jason Reitman, who is a fine filmmaker in his own right.
Yeah.
And additionally, Paul Rudd is in it, and then the Stranger Things kid, who's in all the things when they need a kid. And a bunch of young child actors I'd never seen before, probably because I don't have Nickelodeon, but...
and not to mention that movie was made so long ago now that they're all like 20.
I know. I was thinking about that. Like, what's the press junket going to be like? They're all like have mustaches and stuff. Like, who did I made this? Wait, you're 8 in the movie. What's the deal? Before Afterlife was going to be a thing, there were rumors for years about a Ghostbusters, and Ghostbusters 3. Dan Aykroyd would even give interviews about it and talk about what he was working on. And he was working very seriously on a script that apparently almost made it. And the holdout generally was Bill Murray. Mm-hmm. And he agreed to come back to the role if and only if he died, kind of like Harrison Ford wanted for Han Solo.
Yeah.
He'd come back only if he died and was a ghost in the movie, right? And this was also back when Harold Ramis was still with us. And I used to... go down this rabbit hole all the time because of that possibility. I just, who doesn't like to think about that original crew getting back together?
Yeah.
Bill Murray felt disenfranchised with it just because he felt like Ghostbusters 2 was just an effects, movie. Mm-hmm. That had definitely some good interpersonal moments. But the first movie is a cast driven, story driven movie. Mm-hmm. And, Dan Aykroyd very famously can get out of hand very quickly, as evidenced by Blues Brothers. Yeah. That's so over the top. All I'm just going to say is Carrie Fisher with a rocket launcher or whatever, assault rifle, whatever she had.
Oh, she has both of them in that movie.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
That's why.
A rocket launcher and an assault rifle.
Very good. Yeah, there you go. And then the original treatment of the original Ghostbusters was supposed to take place through time and space and interdimensionally. And it was they liked the idea of the ghost busting, but they're like, we can't afford to make this movie, obviously. So they brought on Harold Ramis to say, instead of shooting it in time and space. Oh, it was also like a 500-page script, and apparently scripts are supposed to be 75-ish pages, Harold Ramis is just brought it down to earth. Literally, it's New York. We're in New York. Yeah. So, budget just went pew. So we kind of just kept hacking away and getting down to the meat and potatoes of Dan Aykroyd's awesome idea about, these jamokes who are just, every Joe's kind of who figure out how to bust ghosts.
Yeah, middle-aged guys with guts being the heroes.
That's right. That's right. Totally. And obviously, the first one was a huge success. The second one was too. It was a huge movie. But yeah, just like kind of left Bill Murray especially like disenfranchised. But Dan Aykroyd kept charging on and kept trying to get the movie made. And the concept he came up with, which I think is an awesome idea and absolutely should have been made, was Ghostbusters Go to Hell, which would have found the OG gang, right? Training up the new recruits. So they're getting ready. They're going to use it to pass the torch and keep the franchise going because Dan Aykroyd is aware of his own age. They can. I think the jumpsuit sizes only go up so much. So
they have to keep hiring a tailor to let out room for their beer guts.
Yeah, and so they were going to have these young recruits in there, and then at one point there's half the team got slurped through a portal into alternate dimension, into hell. They're in the same space, just in a different dimension, so they can't be seen. They're, even though they occupy interdimensional crap. I can't explain it. It's the same space. They're in New York, but another dimension, New York. So the people on top side, our side, use some Egon technology, right? And they track those who got sucked into the hell dimension. And I'm sure they'll find there was some sort of like mechanism, kind of like in the first movie, like the architecture of New York, windows, like that building was built with like special girders that are made of a special material, so on and so forth. Tobin's spirit guide would have been involved probably, and they bring them back, and likely they would not have brought Bill Murray back. He would have maybe gotten his wish, apparently, to be a ghost in that movie. So
I can see
we didn't get that, and it's a bummer.
I can see Bill Murray not being like, if he thought the second one was too effects driven, like a movie that takes place in hell, or half of which takes place in hell, would probably have to also be very heavily effects driven. So I guess I could see him not being super psyched about it, but I'm bummed out that basically we never got another movie with that full cast because of his insistence of like, no, I don't want to do it unless this happens or unless this happens. I spent so many years of my childhood and teenage and adult life like waiting for the two things I wished for the most were Ghostbusters 3 and Indiana Jones 4. I kind of wish I was still wishing for Indiana Jones 4.
Yeah, I wish you were too.
But
yeah,
I guess we are getting the Ghostbusters 3. So
yeah, I remain optimistic about that movie.
Same.
And I recently read Ivan Reitman was shown the cut recently, and apparently it brought him to tears. Apparently,
oh well, that's good to hear.
Yeah, because it sucked so bad. He's like, you're my
disowned his son.
Like we have the same last name. Yeah. I'm sorry, but you're not my son anymore. And then he broke down crying and left. No, but apparently it's really good. And Jason Reitman was actually said, like, I wish the movie was coming out, but also the silver lining of this pandemic is I've had the time to complete all those things. You're like, oh, we're out of time.
Yeah.
He got to finish it.
Yeah. Well, that's another thing. Like, film studios always set a deadline, like, or set a release date and start promoting like before the film's even in production.
Oh yeah.
Like, if you think about like the current Batman movie with Robert Pattinson, like they've already put out a trailer with a release date, and obviously because of the pandemic, they have an excuse to push it back. But generally, like Alien 3 was like the same thing. Like as soon as it was like in production, they're like, here's a release date. Like, we don't even have a director or a story yet, and you've got a release date that we're trying to meet. So,
so there's our list of movies, for better or for worse, did not get made, based on properties that we like a lot.
There it is.
And I will say I'm disappointed I'm most disappointed in Alien 3 just because it's such a meddlesome story.
Yeah.
But my biggest takeaway, because I didn't know all this stuff, was, and I'm not surprised because of DC is just such a mess with their properties. Was that whole all that shit with Tim Burton and the Spider producer.
Yeah. Same thing with Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 4.
Yeah.
Oh well.
Yeah. Oh well. Well, hope you enjoyed it. Hope it wasn't too long for you.
Well, I enjoyed it, so.
I enjoyed it too. Still enjoyed it. I enjoyed it again.
Same.
Awesome. Well, ZJ, I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, talk to you soon.
And thanks for listening.
Thank you.
SAZETU is brought to you by Maine Spirits. Learn more about the spirits they bring into the state of Maine at mainspirits.com and what to do with them by downloading their app for your smartphone or visit them on Instagram at Maine_spirits. Promotional consideration provided by State Theater Portland. Learn more at statetheaterportland.com and Sun Tiki Studios. Learn more at suntikistudios.com.